Good morning, TC. Let's give it up for Jesus one more time in this house. Man, we're excited that you guys are here and kicking off the next episode of Sushi, Sex, and Subtitles. Man, I want to talk to you guys about marriage a little bit today. Now, if you're here and you're single, don't worry, don't leave now. You're like, I'm out. No, stick around. I believe that you can get some great truths out of this as well. All right. If you're not married yet, you may end up being married, and you're going to want some of this information. All right. So truth be told, it's going to be helpful no matter what. All right. How many guys have a Netflix account? Raise your hand. Anyone? Netflix account, Hulu, any of that stuff? Right. How many of you actually have one, or you're borrowing someone else's? Okay, very good. See that number cut in half, right? And then you're like, as a matter of fact, that is my cousin. So, reality is this, right? A lot of us watch streaming platforms. I was watching a show the other day. It was on a Saturday, and it was a gorgeous day, like high of like 68 degrees, 70 degrees, somewhere in there. And so I'm sitting on the couch watching one of my shows, and then right after lunch, the nap hit. And y'all know that Saturday nap with the windows open type of deal, where you're like, oh man, is this heaven? Right? So I'm watching the show, I nodded off, and then I woke up, and you know how you can tell if you slept good when you're trying to figure out what grade you're in when you wake up? You know what I'm saying? Like, did I miss the bus? Like, oh man, did I do my homework? Miss Mac is gonna be so mad. So like, you're trying to figure it all out, and that was what happened. I woke up and I was like, dude, what year is it? You know. But when I fell asleep, I was watching a show. Well, when I woke up, the show was still going, right? And you ever been watching the show and the show's still going, but it's in a completely different place than it was when you left off? You know what I'm saying? So like, you're like, who are these characters? And then you find out someone's dead and you're like, what did I miss? Right? And so I was watching the show and it went to by the time I wake up, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm like, what is going on with the show right now? And then, so I went back to the main menu, I was like, I slept through 3 episodes, right? But not only did I sleep through 3 episodes, one of the episodes was the last episode of that season. So not only am I on a whole different episode, I'm in a whole different season, all right? And so I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Now, I say all that to say, how many of you, if you've been in a relationship or engaged, and definitely if you're married, have realized that there's a significant change that happens in your life when you go from single to married? And if you're not careful, you'll feel in your marriage the way I felt waking up from that nap, which was, what in the world is going on right now? Because oftentimes we don't make the shift that is required to go from single to engaged to married. And a lot of people are living a married life, trying to live a married life like they're still single and can't figure out why it's going wrong. But I'm here to tell you today that there are ways and steps that we can take to have healthy relationships and healthy marriages, but it's going to require you to switch to what I'm calling today the next episode. All right? Hence Dr. Dre in the background. All right, so someone came up to me and was like, we need to make it mandatory. If you don't know that song, you can't be a part of TC. I was like, yeah, we're going to put that in next steps. You know? So anyways. So here's the reality I want you to grab a hold of, right? Marriage isn't about me. I'm going to say that again because I wanted to get down like into your bones. Marriage isn't about me anymore. It's about us. Now, here's why this is hard. Because I really like things that are about me. Anybody relate? Y'all are very quiet this morning. Y'all got to sleep and everything. Y'all better wake up, right? How many of y'all have a hard time making things less about you and more about other people? Anybody relate? Turn to your neighbor and say, I like it about me. You want to know why? How many guys have ever been like in a group of people and they're all trying to make a restaurant decision? Isn't that not the worst? You want to know why? Because people are stupid. Like, where's the lie? All right, so like when someone's like, let's go to Chili's, I'm like, get out, get out, right? No, but in all honesty, right? It's hard because there has to be a switch that gets flipped from a person that only lives for themselves to a person that now lives for more than themselves. And the reason this is hard is because we like to make things about us. My challenge to all of us today, whether you're single, whether you're married, wherever you're at in this thing, is to look at this not just as a married person or a single person, but to look at this as a Christian. Because what does it look like to follow Christ? Matter of fact, let's look at Matthew 20:28. What's the template that Jesus gave us? Well, Jesus says, "For even the Son of Man came not to be served," in other words, not to have it my way, not to have everything for me, but to serve others and give his life as a ransom for many. Which means, just as believers, just as Christians, just as people that are following Jesus and have put our faith in him for the forgiveness of our sins and now have given him our life, just as those people, single, married, or not, God has called each one of us to a place where we now live a life given to him in sacrificial ways to love God and love people and give ourselves up for it. The reason why this is hard is because we like things our way. And so what God is calling us to as Christians, just as believers, is to live a life of sacrifice. This can be hard, especially in marriage. Turn to your neighbor and say, it can be hard. Now, if you're sitting next to your spouse, look at him and say, especially with you. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, don't do that. All right, so we're called to live a Christian life. Here's one of the things I believe, honestly, right? I believe this in my bones, is I believe for married folks, I believe the greatest testament to your Christian faith should be how the world and your family testifies of how you love your spouse. I believe that. I remember I heard one time my dad was telling me a story of a pastor he knew really, really well, who lived up north. And one day he was riding home from church. It was him, his wife, and he had a 5-year-old kid in the back. And so the 5-year-old leaned up one day on the way home from church and said, "Daddy, how come you don't act at home the way you act at church?" "That'll wreck you." He said, I wanted to say, "Get." He said, if it was a staff member, I would have fired him. No, I'm just kidding. But the reality is this. We should be loving our spouse as well. Now, I get it's a two-way street, all right? So let's just get that out of the way. But I think there are some important things that we can grab a hold of. And so here's the question I want all of us to reflect on this morning, okay? Have you fully bought into living beyond yourself? That's the question. They're going to throw it up on the screen for you. Have you fully bought in to living beyond yourself? Beyond my way. Beyond me, beyond it's about what I want, beyond this is my preference. How many guys are like me and you always have a preference? Literally in the staff, like when I'm meeting with staff members, someone will be like, "Do you have a preference like that?" And anyone that's worked for me long has been like, "Oh, he always has a preference about that." Because I do always have a preference about everything. The hard part is not telling everyone what my preferences are all the time. Anybody relate? Okay, good, very good, right? But here's the deal. We can forget what it looks like. We're going to go to Ephesians 4. We're going to spend some time in Ephesians 4 and then bounce into Ephesians 5 today. That's where most of this work is going to be. The reason we're going to be there is Paul's writing to the Ephesians, the church in Ephesus, and as he's writing to them, if you look at Ephesians, it's written differently than the other books that Paul's written. And the reason why is it's a very formal book, right? So he tends to get into the weeds a little bit with Galatians and the Corinthians, all that stuff. But when he's talking to the church of Ephesus, it's very formal. It's very linear. This is what you need to know. You used to do this. This is what used to happen. Now you need to do this. This is the way you need to live. So it's pretty straightforward. And we're going to go to Ephesians 4, 17 through 24. And I just want to show you about what we're talking about when we're saying letting go of me and looking towards we, right? Now this I say and testify in the Lord that you must, say those two words with me, no longer. I think we can do better. Let's try that again. That you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do in the futility of their minds. That means you used to do it one way, but I'm telling you, that's not the way you do it anymore, right? They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God, but that's not the way you learned Christ. So we're going to talk about marriages today, but to talk about marriage, we got to understand that to just be believers, it means that we have to understand how Jesus wants us to act and respond and live as believers. And if we can do that with the world, we can definitely do it with our spouse, because how many guys know this? Our spouse gets the worst version of us, right? And so if we can do it for the world, we need to be able to do it for them, right? But that's not the way you learn Christ, he says. Let's go to the next part. Put off your old self. So in case he didn't make it clear in the first half, he's going to make it clear in the second half. Put off your old self. Say put off. That means put it away. That's who you used to be. Put it away. Yeah, but I have preferences. Cool. Put it away. Yeah, but I like things my way. Awesome. So does everyone. Put it away. But I think that my opinion should rule over everyone else's. Great. Put it away. Put off your old, these are my habits. This is just my personality. Great. Put it away. I'm not a jerk. That's just how I am. Well, anyways. Put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, wanting things our way. And to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, put on, what does it say? The new self. In other words, if we're going to walk as believers, we have to make a conscious decision to put something down and pick something else up. So some people come to me and they're like, man, I've given my life to Jesus, but I just don't really want to change that much. And I'm like, huh? Right? No. Put off the old self, put on the new self, right? Created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. And so today's going to be very practical. We're going to talk about marriage. We're talking about some things that we've learned along the way, and I think the Bible gives us a little bit of direction on. So I want to give you some decisions that we have to make, that you and your spouse have to make, decisions we have to make to have a healthy marriage and to get into the next episode. The old episode is gone. The next one is here. So each one of them start with we've decided, all right? And so let's go for it. We've decided, number one, to move from increasing me to investing in we. We've moved from increasing me, my wants, increasing me, increasing my value, increasing what I desire, increasing my way. We've moved from increasing me to investing in we, us, together, right? And that requires one big thing, to stop holding on so tightly to things. It requires us to let go of it being my way and investing in us, a collaborative environment, us doing these things together. Ephesians 5:21 says, submit to one another, right? Out of reverence for Christ. You know what that means? We live in a constant state of I'm giving to you and you're giving to me. Anybody have a hard time with that? You want to know why? Because everyone's ideas, except for mine, are stupid. Oh, y'all don't live that like that too? Right? Tell me you haven't walked away from a conversation and done this. Everyone's talking and you're like, oh, dear God. Right? Tell me you haven't done this. Don't look at your spouse after I'm done. All right? You ever walked away from a conversation from your spouse going, oh, dear God. It's hard because when you put two people in a room, they're going to disagree with each other. If you put two of me in a room, we're going to disagree with each other. Right? It's hard because we have to go from me to we, right? Ashley and I have some big goals we're trying to obtain in our life, man, quite frankly. Pastors don't have 401ks, so we're trying to set ourselves up for the future. I don't want to wait till I'm 55 to start talking about retirement. So we're trying to set some things in motion now. And we're genuinely praying, God, we're going to start making some moves financially and investing and stuff like that. And we're praying that you would bless it down the road. That's what we're praying. But as I'm praying for that down the road, you want to know what I'm also doing? I'm investing in right now. For me, that looks like this. It can look like however it looks for you. Once a month, I do something for my wife that she doesn't expect, that I've heard her voice she wishes was done, and I just do it with the help of her dad. All right, so I'm like, hey, your wife has a new project, and I could really use some. Your daughter has a new wife. Okay, anyway, so I do something special for her. She doesn't even know it's coming. Here's the reason why. I'm asking God to bless us in the future, but how many of us are asking God to do something great then, but we're doing nothing about it now? God, I want you to give me a great marriage in the future, and I'm just kind of hoping we end up there, but I'm not making any conscious efforts to change how I'm living now. And if that's you, my invitation to you is, let's become intentional about investing in. So I'm investing in my marriage now, believing it's going to be great then. Listen, I'm not waiting till I get there and going like, man, I really hope this thing pans out. I'm making a conscious decision today to say, I'm going to do what I can today to make sure that that down there is great. And here's the reality. We have to do that. Listen, if she's a gift to me from God, I've got to honor her as a gift from God. I'll put it to you this way. If she's a gift from God and I'm not honoring her, what makes me think God's looking to give me more gifts? But isn't that what we're praying for? God, give us more, take care of us better. Are we doing right with what we have, showing God we can be trusted with more? Same with our finances. We've committed to the Imagine campaign. We've committed to give bigger than we ever have before. My wife kind of looked at me like my wife is the saver in our marriage. So we had a conversation like, what are we giving to the campaign? And I was like, I think we should do this. And she went, and I was like, ooh. And she said, if that's what you're doing, I said, I believe God's going to take care of us. We need to say yes to this. Why? Because I'm believing God's going to take care of us then, so we've got to do something now, right? So we have to get to the point where we're sacrificing, making it about we, investing in us. And so for every decision we have on your notes, I've given you just a tip, and I want to give you this one, right? Just a helpful tip on how to do that. For this one, it's start how you want to finish. Start how you want to finish. Let me explain that. If you want to be having date nights 10 years from now, start having date nights now. Maybe you've done this before. When things get less crazy, then we'll blank. Anybody? How many guys have realized it never gets less crazy? How many guys have realized every season has chaos built into it? How many guys have realized there's always something ready to rob you of your time and your energy and your effort, right? If it's worth doing 10 years from now, listen to me, it's worth doing now. So become intentional about starting how you want to finish. And so for me, like in our marriage, you can't get a Wednesday night meeting with me. You can't. You want to know why? There's a giant pink block on my calendar that says, date with Ashley. And so when people call or they talk to my assistant and they're like, hey, I need a meeting with Pastor Brad. Can you do Wednesday night? She's like, no, you can't. That's the only time I have. It's like, you're going to have to figure that out, honey. You want to know why? Because I refuse to give people and everybody the best version of myself and give my wife my leftovers. God called me to her first and anyone else second. So I have to make sure that she's taken care of before I give myself to anybody else. Now, I know that sounds like a lost thing, like people don't talk about it a lot, but that's what God has called us to. So we have to invest in we. Number two, we've decided to move from conditional care to sacrificial love. We've decided to move from conditional care to sacrificial love. Let me explain that in a minute. First, I want to read to you Ephesians 5, 1 and 2. Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly beloved children, or dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So Paul's saying, love each other well, sacrifice for each other the way Jesus sacrificed for us, which again, can be hard. But I want to help you understand this conditional versus sacrificial thing. So for many of us, this is what loving someone looks like. As long as you meet my needs, communicate to me my way, check these boxes, and do all these things for me, I'll love you. Anybody relate? As long as, take it out of marriage for a second. As long as you're this type of person, you can do these things and you can do it this way and all that stuff, we can be friends, right? Those are conditional cares. As long as you meet my conditions, I'll care for you. But what marriage actually is it's not a list of conditions where if you check all these boxes, then I'll love you well or I'll care for you well. It's actually sacrificial love, which means this: despite the fact that you have checked very few of these boxes today, I'm going to love you anyways. Anybody have a hard time with that? Good. Right? We've decided to move from, man, I need you to meet all these conditions to, listen, here are the things that we're trying to do together, But no matter what, I'm choosing to love you no matter what. I'm choosing to say yes to you today, regardless of how many things on my list you met. Now, here's the thing. This only works if both people say yes. Because how many of you have ever tried to be something for somebody else and they're trying to be nothing for you? That don't work. So, I'm trying to move past the conditions. Why? Because we live in a world where it's like me, my, mine, mine, mine. Anybody watch Finding Nemo? Mine. Like, you know what I'm saying? You guys ever been around a 2-year-old, right? Go in the nursery right now. Every toy belongs to every kid, right? Someone else tries to pick it up. They're like, mine, mine. It's like, which toy isn't yours? They're like, no, they're all mine, bro, right? Why? Because 2-year-olds have it built into them the same thing we have it built into us. We're selfish. Now some of you are like, no, I'm not. Okay. We're selfish. We want what we want, right? So if you're the person that's like, listen, if you can meet my needs, check these boxes, be this for me, if you can agree with me here and take care of me there, if you can do all of these things, then we can be together. But if you can't, then we won't. Listen to me. You're going to be alone for a long time. Because no one can meet the type of needs you're putting on someone. It's an impossible expectation. But hear me, if we can both agree, man, we're going to love people sacrificially and say yes, regardless of whether or not they meet our needs, regardless of whether or not they bring value to me, man, we're going to love people sacrificially. We can change that. So here's the thing. I'm going to give it to you. Your helpful tip for this one right here. Listen, make the choice ahead of time. Make the choice ahead of time. This is important because how many of you have ever tried to make difficult decisions in the middle of an argument? Anybody know that doesn't go well for you? Well, then I'm just gonna, don't do that. Well, I've never said this before, but I'm gonna say it now. Don't do that. Why? Listen, this is a decision you make before you get into the heat of the moment, not in the middle of the heat of the moment. I'm making the decision ahead of time that even when they don't meet my needs, I'm gonna love them sacrificially anyways. So that when the time comes, and listen to me, it will, when they don't meet all your needs, because they won't, and when they fail you, because they will, that you love them anyways. That's important, because it's not conditional, it's sacrificial. Next, we've decided to move from commonality to communication. We've decided to move from commonality to communication. How many guys remember when you were dating? Like, first of all, I got to ask this question because, I think it's awesome. How many guys dated through the 90s? Raise your hand. Dated through the 90s? 4 people? Seriously? All right. How many guys dated through the 90s and early 2000s? How many of you remember having a house phone? Okay, much better. How many guys remember dating with a house phone and you did that thing where you fell asleep listening to each other breathe when you were dating? Perfect. That was what I was getting at, right? So you were talking to each other, and then one of you would wake up and be like, "Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm totally here." It's like, bro, y'all hadn't said nothing in 10 minutes, right? Just hang up the phone, right? And so then you got like a sister. She's like, "Get off the phone. I need to use it," right? So I literally saw someone filling out a job application the other day that said home phone, and I was like, seriously, come on. No one has one of those. Maybe you do. No offense. Anyway, but you remember doing that. How many guys, and maybe you can connect with this, like early in your relationship, when you were dating, maybe even when you were engaged, early in your marriage, you had so much to talk about and so much in common. You guys remember? Like it was easy to date each other because when you saw each other, you're like, man, we have so much to talk about. And you would go on dates, and you would laugh, and you would enjoy time together, and you would listen to each other breathe as you fell asleep, and like run up your parents' phone bill, like all this other stuff. It was great, right? And then what happens? You get married. And you have less to talk about now. Some of the newlyweds in the room are like, I don't know what y'all are talking about. Hang on, bro. It's coming for you, okay? Because how many guys know around year 5, you pick your head up and you don't have as much to talk about as you used to? Around Whatever year it may be for you, you're like, man, we don't have as much in common. We don't have as much to kind of talk. We don't have as much going on. And date nights have kind of become stale. Why? Because your commonality, things in common, your commonality has decreased. So this is what happens. When your commonality decreases, your communication has to increase. You have to increase the frequency and intimacy of your communications. I mean, I want you to think about it. When you first got married, there are young people in the room. If you got young people in the room, cover their ears. Okay. When you first got married, you had a lot of things in common. Sex, a new house, right? Sex. Maybe you got a new car, right? Sex, right? You're figuring out your job together, right? You're joining your bank accounts. Sex, right? Okay, like, let's all just be real for a second, okay? Right, so like, you've got all of these things that you're doing. You're setting goals, you're growing together. Sex, okay, so like, you have a lot in common. There's a lot connecting you. But how many guys know that some of those things that are connecting you early aren't always there as you grow older? And it becomes more difficult to maintain your connectivity. Listen to me. When your commonality decreases, your communication has to increase. You have to start talking more, right? As life goes on, you have to do that. I want you to grab a hold of this. Listen, you never, say never. Say never. You never unintentionally, magically, unconsciously end up with a fantastic marriage. You know, you don't pick your head up 20 years from now and be like, my God, we had a great marriage and never tried at this. It doesn't happen. Great marriages are built with intentional perspective and great communication. You want to know why? Because great marriages are intentional. Everything drifts towards chaos. So if you want it to end up somewhere, you better make it end up somewhere. Because if you don't make it end up there, it's going to end up somewhere else. Anybody ever been on a boat before? Did someone drive it? Or did you just let the waters figure it out? If you don't do it for a boat, why would you do it for a marriage? And so what we have to do is become very intentional. Ephesians 5:13, this is important. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible. When you communicate with each other, you're bringing things to the surface that can help keep you accountable and whole. But the worst things in your marriage are oftentimes the things you refuse to talk about. So we have to increase our communication to stay healthy and stay better, right? So some of us just need to have an honest conversation. And so here's one of the ways that you can do that, right? Your helpful tip for this. I want you to dream together again. Dream together again. I remember my wife sat down with me. We were going on a date, and again, we go every Wednesday night. It's date night for us, and so we were sitting at a sushi place, and it was like right at the beginning of COVID was kind of kicking off. We were trying to buy this campus. We were having church in a movie theater. And as COVID's ramping up, people are looking to me for answers. Like I work for someone that has answers. Like I don't, like you're a pastor? Surely God's giving you supernatural insight into this worldwide pandemic. I'm like, sorry, bro. No, I don't know anything either. Okay, so like I'm in the same boat as y'all, confused and not knowing. So, just everything's going on in my mind and in my world, and I'm having to make hard decisions. And I remember I was sitting at a date night with my wife, Ashley, and she looked at me. It was the end of the date. We were getting ready to leave. And she said, you don't talk to me anymore. I said, what do you mean? And she said, this is the third date night in a row that we showed up, we ate, and we left. And we didn't really say anything to each other. And it wasn't that I didn't love her, and it wasn't that I didn't have things to say. It was that there was too much going on in the wheels in my brain. And maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you can relate to having a lot going on in life. And so you know what I didn't do? I didn't say, well, if you only understood how much stress I'm under, because God checked me. Right when she said that, God said, don't respond, just receive it. Which, if you know me, is a miracle. Because I wanted to be like, well, if you, and God was like, It was almost like he was like, boom. He was like, don't say nothing, dog. Just be quiet. So I was like, all right. But I received it. And I made a promise to myself that day, I'll never let my wife feel like I don't love her again. Now, she knew I love her, but I didn't want her to feel that way. That week, I went home and I spent 1 hour that week researching articles on having conversations, like conversation starters. So I now, in my phone, literally in my phone, in my notes app, I have links to articles that are like 100 funny questions to ask your spouse to start conversations. I have 3 of those. I have 300 questions. Like, I'm prepped for 2 years right now, okay? Like, I'm in a really good spot. So the reason I say that is maybe you just need to like get ahead of the game a little bit. But I want you to grab a hold of this, and I'll touch on that in a second. I want you to grab a hold of this. Some of you just need to dream again with your spouse. Like, me and my wife love to play this game where we're like, what would we do if we won $100 million? Playing the lottery. It's like, first we'd have to play the lottery. Anyway, so that's relevant. So it's like, what would we do if we won $100 million? My wife would start 4 pit bull rescues. I know that. Okay, so like that's pre-decided already. So especially she adopted some cats that live under our back porch recently, and I'm really not happy about it. Don't woo that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I feel like it's God, really. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm in a growth season right now. God's like, oh, you're going to hate on cats constantly? Watch this. And he put them on my back porch. And then my wife fed them once. That was it. Now they're just like sitting outside like, hey, what y'all doing in there? Y'all need to bring some food out. So now my wife has cats. Someone told me, they're like, bro, you have cats? I said, no, she has cats. And they stay outside. Let's be real clear. Anyways, I feel like I need to get that off my chest. I'm glad we were here together for that moment. Dream together again. Listen, play the game where you sit down at dinner and it's like, man, if we had $100 million, what would we do? If we had $1 million, what would we do? Listen, let God fuse your hearts together with the playful conversations that inspire you to dream about the future. Even if you never get there, dream about it anyways. Have fun. Laugh. Your spouse should be the person you laugh more with. And if you're not there yet, make arrangements on how you're going to get there. That's all I'm saying. Which brings me to the next one. We've decided, again, these are decisions you're going to make. We've decided to move from spontaneity to intentionality. We've decided to move from spontaneity to intentionality. There's a misconception about spontaneity, right? Spontaneous living. There's a misconception that spontaneity equals romance. It's like when it's spontaneous and it's fun, it's romantic. And so when we're spontaneous together and it's magical, and married folks, you know what I'm alluding to without saying it. Okay. Sucks. Okay, so when it's spontaneous, it's romantic. You know what another word for spontaneous is? Sporadic. And I'm not just talking about sex, all right? I'm talking about life together, date nights, intimate moments that could be a walk outside where you're just together and you're talking and you're connecting. Listen, if you're going to make them spontaneous, you're going to make them sporadic. If you're going to make them sporadic, you're not going to make them at all. Spontaneity doesn't equal romance. Intentionality does. So it's time we become intentional about making sure, which goes back to what I was talking about with the conversations with my wife. It's like, all right, fine. I'm going to spend an hour looking up all these things so that I can have these questions. We've laughed more in the last year at these ridiculous questions that are in my phone. But we've also had some of the greatest conversations that have grown us together because of these questions in my phone. It cost me an hour, but it's made my marriage better. You think it was worth it? Absolutely. So my encouragement to you is your marriage might need something else. What I'm encouraging you to do is be intentional about doing what it takes to make it great. What it looks like for you may be different, because I can promise you without a shadow of a doubt, there's not another living soul on this planet that's like my wife. So you'll probably need something different, okay? I say that because she's perfect. There's nothing wrong with her at all. My helpful tip for this one, and we're getting ready to shut down in a few minutes. My helpful tip for becoming intentional: plan what's important. Plan what's important. Listen, if it's worth doing, it's worth planning. Plan what's important. Plan your date nights. Plan your times together. Sure, you can have spontaneous moments. That's fine too. But plan something. Don't let life dictate to you what the romantic and intentionality looks like in your marriage. Because if you do, it'll be sporadic and it'll be unhealthy. Right? And listen, if you're a parent in here and you have kids, just raise your hand. Parents with kids, raise your hand. Perfect. I want to talk to you for just a minute. Everyone, give me a second. Right? Your kids need to see you and your spouse going on date nights together without them. I'm going to say it again. Your kids need to see you and your spouse going on date nights together without them. They need to understand they're not the most important thing in your marriage. Right? Husbands, fathers, your sons will know how to treat a young lady by how you treat your wife. Be intentional about that. And ladies, your sons will know how to treat, or your sons will know how to treat a young woman by how you allow yourself to be treated, and they'll know how to be treated by a woman by how you treat your husband. And it's important that we understand this. I wanted to bring it in this part because we need to be intentional about even how we let our kids. I talk to so many couples. I'm like, when's the last date night you went on? When I'm doing marriage counseling, when's the last date night? Oh, we don't do that much because of the kids. I'm like, and like, can I help you out for a second? We're past time, but we're here anyways. Like, can I just help you out for a second? You're not the first couple to ever have kids. How do you think the rest of us got here? So when a couple's like, man, we just have kids, I'm like, right. And question mark? Like, family member, friend, I get it. Don't just let anybody watch your kids. People are weird, okay? I get it. What I'm saying is, you can't use your kids as a reason to not love each other well. Otherwise, you're going to fail at loving each other well in front of your kids. And you're going to teach them how not to love their future spouse as well. The greatest example they're going to have is you. So just think about that. Schedule date nights. And I'm writing a blog. It's going to come out tomorrow about how that really breaks some of this down and give you some details on some things to think about. Listen, I don't have it all figured out. I just know what God's saying. And even that, sometimes I'm like, really? Okay, so like, I know what God's communicating, and I just want to give that to you. So you can check it out for some of the details, all right? Last but not least, and then we'll shut this down. We've decided to move from the past to the present. We've decided to move from the past to the present. Listen, back there, it may not look great. Back there, that might be where a relationship failed. Back there, that might be where things did not go well for you. Back there, that might be where that business adventure failed. Back there might be where that promotion didn't come through. Back there might be where it didn't work out. Back there might be where you hurt someone. Back there might be where you got hurt by someone. Back there might be some really ugly things. But listen to me, you've got to make the decision to stop living back there. Because there's nothing for you back there except memories. But in the present right now, for married folks, there's a spouse standing in front of you that you can change how you love and hope and pray and encourage them to change how they love you. So one of the greatest things you can do in your marriage is learn from the past, but live in the present. Because you can't change what's back there, but you can change where you're at now. And so my encouragement to all of you guys is, man, decide that we're not going to live in the past. We're going to live in the present. And so for all of us, it's time that we get back to the main menu of our lives and get to the right episode that we're on. How many guys want God to bless your marriage? Raise your hand. Even if you're single, how many guys want God to bless your future marriage that you may have? All right, very good. All right. You guys want God to bless. One more time, raise your hand. I want God to bless my marriage. All right, very good. We're all on the same page. Beautiful. Even you guys at home, awesome. Very good. I saw you raise your hand. I see that hand. So here's the thing I want to give you. The last statement they'll put on the screen for me. It's time, if you want that, then it's time you honor what you want God to bless. We're saying, God, I want you to bless this. Listen to me. Then it's on us to honor it as well. When we honor it, God can bless it. All right? And so let's honor what we're asking God to bless by doing our part and inviting God into the process where we love each other well. And let's get to the next episode because the last one's over. All right? Let's pray. Father, we thank you. God, I pray for those that are here that just need to be encouraged, and God, that their heart may have been low, and even for those that are in relationships or marriages, God, where things just haven't quite been right lately. God, I pray you strengthen. If you're in this room right now, or you're watching online, would you just grab, if you're sitting next to your spouse, would you just grab their hand or put your arm around them? God, I pray for every married couple that's listening right now. God, I pray that you would fuse together hearts. There is no whole person in a marriage. It's just two broken people learning to love each other well. So God, I pray that you would help us realize, first of all, that there is no perfect person. And if there's not a perfect person, there can't be a perfect marriage. But God, I pray that as we're learning that, you would also show us, Father, what it looks like to love each other well. And so God, as we are growing together, as we're loving each other, God, I pray that you would strengthen us. God, fuse hearts together and help them fall more in love with each other than they ever have before. Lead us, God, and encourage us to live sacrificially even, God, and love each other despite flaws and issues that may come up. God, help us become intentional, Lord, to love each other well. We thank you for that, God. And Lord, for any person in this room that's not married, whether they've been through a divorce or they're still single, God, I pray right now, Father, that you help build them into the person that they're becoming, so that, God, if there's a person in the future, Lord, for them, that you have for them, God, that they're whole when they get there. They may not be perfect, but God, that they're seeing ways that they can love sacrificially even now to become that person. Then we thank you for it, God. And we thank you we can look to you for all things, even in our marriage. You've got us. And so we love you today and we thank you. It's in your name that we pray, with everyone here with your eyes closed. If you need Jesus today, you know you've got some things in your life, some sin issues, some things that have separated you from God, and we've all been there. But you're here today and you're saying, man, I don't want to be separated from God anymore. I want to be close to him. If that's you, I want to invite you to pray this prayer with me. This prayer doesn't make you saved. This prayer just puts words to the actions of your heart. It says, Jesus, I'm believing that when you died, you paid the price for my sins, and I'm giving you my life. I want to invite you to pray this prayer with me, and the whole church will pray it with you. Say, dear Jesus, forgive me. Forgive me my sins. I believe in you. I believe you died for me. I believe you paid for my sins. So I'm asking for a fresh start. Give me a new beginning as I give you my life, and I'll follow you forever. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. CC, let's give it up for all those that prayed that perhaps for the first time. Man, we celebrate you. Awesome, awesome, awesome.